The Nets are beginning their rebuild, but can they streamline and speed up the process? Let's kickstart them on this edition of The Nest. Hello everybody, welcome back to The Nest Star XP. My name is Robin, welcoming you back as we continue to rebuild NBA teams in their off-season, and we are continuing today with the Brooklyn Nets, a team that has a future ahead of them. They're not in a terrible situation by any means. They're just they're a tanking team. They're a rebuilding team, so they're going to be bad. But they have a lot of young prospects and a lot of pretty solid young players. I will say, Igor Demon, I'm extremely high on him. I think he could be an absolutely great player. And then they also have some pretty good players that they can trade and get picks off of, which we're going to discuss a little bit more today. But I don't think the Nets are in a terrible situation. It's just going to be a long process, if you will. But before we get into it, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure to go check out the TikTok, the Instagram, all that stuff, and just make sure you keep following along because, again, I'm going to be continuing to cover the NBA playoffs and also continuing to cover each NBA team and what I think they should do. So stay tuned for that. Also, before we get into it a little bit further, shout out to my Southern Miss Golden Eagles. We just made regionals, so suck it if you're not a fan. But no, Southern Miss to the top. Alright, to start off the Nets rebuild, what I did was I first looked around for trades for MPJ because I think he can be a hot commodity that you can get a really good asset for. And there's a couple of trades that I have explored and tweaked around with in other rebuilds and things like that. So if you want to go check out those, go check those out. There's like a ton. I think like half the teams that I have been rebuilding as of now have had MPJ in some form, or maybe no, it's the future ones that I have not gotten yet that may have MPJ in them. So just a heads up with that. But the one I'm actually going to be talking about is with the Orlando Magic. And what I think that they could do is straight up just flip MPJ for Franz Wagner, and they may have to give up a first-round pick, a protected first-round pick, in order to get Franz Wagner as well, because I think the youth and Franz may have a little bit more value than just MPJ straight up. Now, why would the Nets do this? Simply because I think Franz is a young enough star that he can be that number one option for the future as long as he can be healthy, and he's also a guy that can kind of kickstart their rebuild as long as he can remain healthy and turn into that number one star. So now that you have Franz Wagner and Igor Demon, and now you have these picks that are going to be coming up, you're going to have a lot of really quality players to just kind of build and develop with. So I like this trade the best, but there's a ton of trades that you can get for MPJ. You could just get picks for him. You can just go and get other young talent. You could just get contract match and then picks and things like that. Whatever you prefer. I just personally went with Franz Wagner. The next thing I look towards is trading Nicholas Claxton. Now, the reason I'm trading Claxton is just because I think he's another pretty hot commodity. He had a really good season, especially playmaking-wise. So I think he can be a pretty hot commodity that you can sell high on and get some good assets back in order to continue this rebuild. So I drew up 3 trades for it. I'm just going to go over the first one real quick because I'm not a big fan of it. It was basically trading Nicholas Claxton to the Celtics for Luka Garza and their first-round pick this year. It's a solid trade, but I don't think Luka Garza can do too much for them, and that's just kind of just a salary match, or a salary filler. Again, I'm not a fan of that trade. If you wanted to make that trade so you have a center that you can play this year, that's cool, but I didn't personally make that trade. The other 2 trades that I looked at, I would be perfectly fine with either one of them if I were the Nets, but the one I ended up going with is the latter one that I'm going to get into afterward, because I think that's a little bit better for them. So the first trade is trading with the Toronto Raptors, and basically trading Nicholas Claxton for Jakob Poeltl, a 2027 first-round pick, and 2 second-round picks. Now, the reason that I made this trade is because I think Jakob Poeltl is kind of one of the worst contracts in the league right now, so moving off of him is going to take some picks, and I don't know if 1 pick and then 2 second-round picks is going to be enough to get Nicholas Claxton realistically. But if you're the Nets, you do get just a solid center that can... He's going to be there for a minute because of the contract, but he can play and just be that center for you as you continue this rebuild and things like that. And you get a first-round pick out of it for next year, it's unprotected, so it can be good, it could be bad, whatever. And then you get second-round picks out of it. So it's not a terrible trade by any means. You do get Poeltl's contract, which is kind of bleh, which is kind of the reason why I did not end up going with this trade as my main trade. The next one will be my main trade, but I would not be mad at this trade either. But no, the trade I actually ended up going with is with the Los Angeles Lakers, because I think the Los Angeles Lakers need a guy like Nicholas Claxton big time, and I think they don't really have the assets to get him, but I do think that there's a couple ways that they can make it happen. So What I ended up doing is I ended up trading Nicholas Claxton for Jared Vanderbilt, Bronny James, and their first round pick this year, which I believe is pick 25. Now, I went with this one because obviously you get the first round pick. It's not a great first round pick, but it's still pick 25, and you also get a young guy in Bronny James, and then Jared Vanderbilt is basically there to match contract. And I may be overselling Bronny James' capabilities just a little bit here, but I do like the idea of the Nets getting another young point guard who, even if he's not going to be like a point guard of the future or anything like that, he can be that quality backup point guard that they could possibly build towards. And if their first round pick this year, which I will spoil, it is a point guard. If he doesn't pan out, you also have Bronny James that could possibly pan out. I don't expect him to like be a star or anything, but even if he turns out to be like a Marcus Smart type where he can be a quality starter, that's a pretty good backup on top of that. And in Jared Vanderbilt, you just have a contract that you can maybe trade again if a team wants a guy like Jared Vanderbilt. They can go and take him, and you can take on another bad contract, or you can just keep Jared Vanderbilt and let him walk in free agency in a couple years. So I like this trade the best, and this is the trade I ended up going with because you also get pick 25, which can be extremely beneficial and help build out this young roster. And now, other than that, it is just a matter of the picks. I did not make any more trades because there's not really a ton of guys that I think would command much value that you really need to get off of. If you wanted to take on picks and get some bad contracts and things like the Jakob Poeltl thing, if you wanted to go and get Jakob Poeltl and just take on pick 19, or just get a future couple second round picks or a future first round pick and take on Jakob Poeltl, and you just send out a guy like Vanderbilt, like Terrence Mann, something like that, you can absolutely do that. But I didn't make any of those trades right now because it's just a matter of how much a team's willing to give them in order to get off their bad contracts, and they'd be most likely future things anyway. That doesn't really affect this season. So with the Nets' own 6th overall pick, I ended up selecting Mikal Brown Jr. And the reason I selected him is because he's one of the younger guards in this draft. He's 6'5", so he's not going to be an undersized guard by any means. And he's got a couple of rough spots, and the shooting obviously isn't consistent yet, but he's still a pretty good playmaker. He's got the steals numbers to be a solid defender at the very least. And I like the idea of the Nets continuing to build with a slasher at the point guard, because you have Igor Demin at that shooting guard position as well, so that backcourt can be very interesting. Plus, I think Mikal Brown Jr. and Franz Wagner would be a nice little 1-2 punch, and then you get Igor Demin as the third option. That's a nice little big three that hopefully can pan out into a pretty solid future contending team. So I like this pick, but honestly, any point guard that is available, like if Darius Acuff is still there at number 6, but I don't expect he may be, but I would obviously expect him to be taken 4th or 5th or 6th. Take Darius Acuff, because I think he's another good guy that could be that future point guard for you. But again, Keaton Wagler, any of these guys would be good for it. I just took Mikal Brown Jr. And then at the 25th pick, I went ahead and selected Flory Badunga. Yeah, Flory Badunga. I'm not pronouncing his name right at all, but I like him. He's technically a forward, but he's 6'10", 235 pounds. He can be a small ball center in this league, and that he's probably going to be starting at center for this team because we don't really have a starting center unless you want to start him at power forward with Day'Ron Sharpe as the center, or if you want to start Noah Clowney at center, technically. Whatever the case may be, two of those three would probably be the front court of the future. But I like Flory. Again, he's young, he's athletic, he's a pretty good rebounder, he's a really good shot blocker for being 6'10", 235 pounds. So I like him. And again, he's another just young guy that's a little raw, but he can develop into something extremely good for you. And you need a big man. You don't need any more guards. You don't need a starting caliber guard, but you do need that starting caliber center. So I like Flory Badunga. I think he can kind of be like Yves Missy. He kind of gives me those vibes just a wee bit. But yeah, like I said, other than that, that's just about it. The Nets don't really need to make a ton of changes because they're just rebuilding, so they just need to keep acclimating picks, need to keep making their draft picks, need to continue to not be good, so that they can keep getting good draft picks. And I think the team that they have can be solid. I don't expect them to make the play-in this year, but maybe next season once Mikal Brown and Igor Demin and Franz get some, and Flory, obviously, those guys get some experience in the league, I think they could be a play-in team in the next few seasons. But the team would look something like this. So Mikal Brown Jr. and Igor Demin would run to the starting two guard positions. Franz Wagner would be the small forward. The center and power forward situation can be up to you, but I went with Noah Clowney starting at power forward and Flory Badunga starting at center. And then off the bench, you have Bronny James, Drake Powell, who showed out this year, Zari Williams, Josh Minot, Danny Wolf, you have Jared Vanderbilt, you have Mann, and you have Dayron Sharp, Terrence Mann, and Dayron Sharp. So you have a lot of guys. You have a very deep bench in terms of that. So it's just a matter of who do you want to play. Do you want to play the young guys in Josh Minot, in Zari, and Danny Wolf, or do you want the veterans to kind of give some experience with Vanderbilt and Mann? It's up to you. Rotation's pretty versatile, so it's just up to the coach to see how he wants to do it. But regardless, this is what the roster will look like. And you just continue to tank. Like I said, there's not much else that you can do if you're the Nets. But yeah, what do y'all think? Do y'all think the Nets should make this trade for Franz Wagner? Because this is probably going to be the most controversial one because I don't think the Orlando Magic are going to be making this trade. But do you think they should? Because I think MPJ would be a perfect fit for Orlando, and I'll discuss it more extent in my Orlando Magic video. But I think for the Nets, I think this is a very good trade for them to get Franz as well. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. And again, make sure to check out the Instagram, TikTok, and all that stuff. And be sure to keep up with the NBA playoffs with the Nest RXP. And until then, y'all, peace.